This is Cemetery Dance by Richard T. Chismar. Elliot Fossey, age 33, small-town accountant, waiting alone, dead of winter, after midnight. The deserted gravel parking lot outside of Winchester County Cemetery. Elliot stared out of the truck window at the frozen darkness. His thoughts raced back to the handwritten note in his pants pocket. He reached down and squeezed the denim. The pants were new, bought for work not a week ago, and still stiff to the touch, but Elliot could feel the reassuring crinkle of paper inside the pocket. While the woman on the radio droned on about a snow warning for the entire eastern sector of the state, storm winds rumbled outside, buffeting the truck. Elliot's breath escaped in visible puffs, and despite the lack of heat in the truck, he wiped beads of moisture from his face. With the same hand, he snatched a clear pint bottle from the top of the dash and guzzled, tilting it upward long after it ran dry. He tossed the bottle onto the seat next to him, where it clinked against two others, and reached for the door handle. The wind grabbed him, lashing at his exposed face, and immediately the sweat on his cheeks frosted over. He quickly pulled the flashlight from his pocket and straightened his jacket collar, shielding his neck. The night sky was starless, enveloping the cemetery like a huge black circus tent. His bare hands shook uncontrollably, flashlight beam fluttered over the hard ground. Somewhere, almost muffled by the whine of the wind, he heard a distant clanking, a dull sound echoing across the grounds. He hesitated, tried to recognize the source, failed. Snow coming soon, he thought, gazing upward. He touched a hand to the lopsided weight in his coat pocket and slowly climbed the cracked steps leading to the monument gate. During visiting hours, the gate marked the cemetery's main entrance and was always guarded by a groundskeeper, a short, roundish fellow with a bright red beard. But at 1 in the morning, the grounds were long closed and abandoned. Elliot's legs ached with every step. The liquor in his system was no match for the strength of the storm. His eyes and ears stung from the frigid blasts of wind. He longed to rest, but the contents of the note in his pocket pushed him onward. As he reached the last step, he was greeted by a rusty, fist-sized padlock banging loudly against the twin gates. It sounded like a bell tolling, warning the countryside of some unseen danger. He rested for a moment, supporting himself against the gate, grimacing from the sudden shock of cold steel. He rubbed his hands together, then walked toward the narrow opening, partly concealed by a clump of scrubby thorn bushes where the fence was almost connected at the gate's left corner. Easing his body through the space, Elliot felt the familiar tingle of excitement return. He had been here many times before, many times. But tonight was different. Creeping among the faded white headstones, Elliot noticed for the first time that their placement looked rather peculiar, as if they'd been dropped from the sky in some predetermined pattern. From above, he ruminated, the grounds must look like an overcrowded housing development. Glancing at the sky again, thinking, big snow on the way, and soon. He moved slower now, still confident, but careful not to pass the gravestone. He had been there before, so many times, but he remembered the first time most vividly, 15 years ago, during the day. Everyone had been there. Grim Elliot standing far behind Cassie's parents, hidden among the mourning crowd. Her father standing proudly, a strong hand on each son's shoulder. The mother, clad in customary black, standing next to him, choking back tears. Immediately following the service, the crowd had left the cemetery to gather at her parents' home, but Elliot had stayed. He had waited in the upper oak grove, hidden among the trees. When the workers had finished the burial, he crept down the hill and sat, talking with his love on the fresh grave, and it had been magical. The first time Cassie really talked to him, shared herself with him. He felt her inside him that day and known that it had been right. Her death, his killing, a blessing. High above the cemetery, a rotten tree limb snapped, crashing to the ground below. Elliot's memory of Cassie's funeral vanished. He stood motionless, watching the bare trees shake and sway in the wind, dead branches scraping and rattling against each other. A hazy vision of dancing skeletons and demons surfaced in his mind. It's called the cemetery dance, the demons announced. Glistening worms squirming from their rotten, toothless mouths. Come dance with us, Elliot, they invited, waving long, bony fingers. Come. And he wanted to go. He wanted to join them. They sounded so inviting. Come dance the cemetery dance. He shook the thoughts away. Too much liquor, that's all it was, and walked into a small gully, dragging his feet through the thin blanket of fall leaves. He recognized the familiar row of stone markers ahead and slowed his pace. Finally, he stopped, steadied the bright beam on the largest slab. The marker was clean and freshly cared for, frozen grass around it still neatly trimmed. There were 2 bundles of cut flowers leaning against it. Elliot recognized the fresh bundle he left just yesterday during his lunch break. He crept closer, bending his knees. Tossing the flashlight aside, he eased next to the white granite stone, touching the deep grooves into the inscription, slowly caressing each letter, stopping at her name. Cassie, he whispered. The words swept away with the wind. I found it, love. He dug deep in his front pocket, pulled out the crumpled scrap of lined white paper. I couldn't believe you came to me again after all these years, but I found the note on my pillow where you left it. Sudden tears streamed down his face. I always believed you'd forgotten me, I truly did. You know I had to do it. It was the only way. You wouldn't even look at me back then, he pleaded. I tried to make you notice me, but you wouldn't, so I had to. The cemetery came to life around him, breathing for the dead. The wind gained strength, plastering leaves against the tree trunk and taller headstones. Elliot gripped the paper tightly in his palm, protecting it from the night's constant fall. I'm coming now, love. He laughed with nervous relief. We can be together forever. He pulled his hand from his coat pocket and looked skyward. Snow coming now, any time. A sudden gust of wind sent another branch crashing to the ground where it shattered into 100 jagged splinters. 2 gravestones away from it, Elliot collapsed hard to the earth. Fingers curled around the pistol's rubber handle. A single gunshot echoed through the cemetery until the storm swallowed it. Bits of glistening brain tissue sprayed the air mixed with the blue splinters, showering the corpse. His mangled head lolled to the side, spilling more shiny gray matter on the grassy knoll. For just one moment, an ivory sliver of moonbeam slipped through the darkness, quickly disappeared. As the crumpled scrap of paper, scrawled in Elliot's own handwriting, was lifted into the wind's possession. The towering trees once again found their dancing partners, and it began to snow.